Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Darkness Tales, and just before this video gets started, I wanted to let you know that my new short film, Late, is actually out on the channel right now. I'll leave a little info card in the upper corner, as well as an annotation at the end of the video, so please go check that out. Give it any criticism or any love that you'd like to, and just let me know what you'd like to see in the future. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into the story. The whole day I was antsy and couldn't sit still. I made plans what I'd do, how I'd approach, and how I'd find a bloodied body lying on the floor of the shack. When the day finally turned to night, I turned off the lights in my house to give him the impression I went to bed early. He'd believe it, I was sure. Us city folks don't work as hard as he did, was what he most likely thought in his arrogance. All the while I sat at my window watching him with my binoculars. My cue was when the lights of the shack turned off, and the old man went back to his house. I dressed in all but black, and after waiting for another half an hour, I made my way outside. With low and quiet steps, I made my way over to his place. For the first time, I wasn't mad at how well his corn had grown. It allowed me to get near his house without having to hide much. Once I was closer, I checked out his farm from between the corn. The lights were off. There were no sounds and nothing was moving. It was clear that the old man must have gone to bed. To be on the safe side, I still waited for another 10 minutes. When they'd passed, I'd rushed to his shack. My heart was beating heavily when I'd made it, and everything stayed quiet. I wasn't too surprised to find the door locked by a padlock. Even I knew that there was no way I'd be able to open it. I hadn't imagined that I'd be lucky enough to find the door unlocked anyways. No, I went for the window of the shack that I was able to see from my house. I knew it'd be locked too, but it was one of these old wooden windows. It consisted of 2 shutters and was only held shut by a metal bolt in the center. I might be able to pry it open wide enough to loosen the bolt and open it. I pried away with the 2 shutters from one another until I could fit my finger in between. At that point, I knew where the shutter was. I'd have to be careful. If I broke the window, the old man would hear me without a doubt. After a nerve-wracking minute of toying around with a couple of tools, I finally loosened the bolt, and the window opened. I scanned the window frame in the area below. Once I saw that there was nothing I could topple over, I climbed inside. The shack was larger than I had imagined. For now, all I saw were shelves filled with tools and various other things. Step by step, I made my way through the place, scanning it. In the end, I took out a small flashlight I'd brought to give things a closer look. There was a sort of mixing station at the end of the shack. To be honest, it was nothing but an old workbench, but on it was an assortment of things. There were containers of various chemicals and fertilizers, a sack of bone meal, and a few bags of his complete fertilizer mixture. As I looked on, I noticed something next to the workbench. It was sort of a metal composter as well as a freezer united, cramped in the corner next to it. The composter was quite modern. It was most likely one of those that helped to quickly compost organic material. I'd read about them. My skin started to crawl as I stared at it. I took a deep breath, and after toying with it for a bit, I figured out how to open it. The instant I opened it, I almost vomited. The smell alone was enough to make me retch. When I looked inside, I saw bloody guts and a few pieces of half-rotten meat. Fucking hell, I cursed, and I stumbled back in shock and disgust. I crashed straight into an assortment of containers on the workbench. A number of them clattered to the ground in an ear-shattering noise. My eyes grew wide. Fuck, you goddamn idiot, what the hell did you just do? I turned off the flashlight and waited. Oh God, please, I hoped. Please make him stay asleep. I waited for almost half a minute, praying that old Werner would stay asleep. My prayers weren't answered. My heart almost stopped when I heard the front door of his house open. God damn it, what's going on out there? If it's you damned kids again. He said nothing else. Oh shit, did he see the window? I tried to think. Tried to remember if I'd closed it after me, but I couldn't. For all I knew, the 2 window shutters might still be wide open. Is someone there? I heard his voice. Then his footsteps came closer. I dare you. Whoever the devil you are, show yourself. I didn't move. I hoped against all certainty that he'd go back to his house. But only a moment later I heard him from the side of the shack. You've got to be kidding me. He must have seen the open window. I could already hear him rummage with the padlock. Now or never, I thought. There was no way I could explain this to him. I was back at the window, trying to get up, but before I could do any more than put my foot through the window frame, the door opened. In one swift motion, he hit the light switch and saw me standing there, dressed in all black, trying to flee the scene. What the hell are you doing in my shack? Then the smell hit him, and his anger turned to pure rage. You goddamn. But in his rage, he couldn't even finish his sentence anymore. He picked the first tool he could, a rake, and came swinging after me. There was no way I'd make it out in time. I barely ducked away and fled to the back of the shack. No, don't. I swear, I saw nothing. But I didn't get the chance to finish, as I had to dodge another hit of the rake. Finally, he saw the open composter and the disturbance on the workbench. You just had to know, did you? You couldn't let it be. Do you have any idea what I went through to finish this? 1 decade. 1 whole decade, and now you're trying to steal it. What the hell? Had he just admitted to what I thought he had? That's it. You're the last person to ever barge in here, I swear it. And with that, he threw the rack to the ground and came at me himself. He almost jumped me, and only now did I realize that old Werner might have been an old man, but damn, he was strong. A life of farming had made his body stout, hardened his muscles. All I was able to do was struggle against him and keep him from overpowering me. I clung to sheer desperation as I was pushed back against the workbench. His eyes were wide, and a moment later he raised one of his hands and hit me square in the face. Once. Twice. When I stumbled, he closed his hands around my neck. I couldn't breathe. Only at this moment did I realize he was really going to kill me. I was going to die. Stars appeared in front of my eyes, but there was nothing I could do. I twitched in his iron grip, grasped blindly around for something, anything. My hands closed around something hard and cold. With all the power I could muster, I swung it in the direction of old Werner. There was a nasty sound, and the old man screamed up. Only when I swung it a second time did I see what I was already holding. It was an old mallet. For a moment, I saw the surprise in his eyes, and his grip loosened. Only too close, once more even harder. In his fury, he wasn't trying to strangle me anymore. No. He was going to break my neck by sheer force. Again and again, I hit him with the mallet. After 3 more hits, his grip finally loosened and he slumped down and fell to the ground. As I looked down at his head, I saw a nasty inward bump at the top where I'd hit him. What I was most surprised, though, was all the blood that still kept gushing forward. Time stood still. As if in a trance, I watched the blood flow from his unmoving body. It must have been only seconds before I realized what I'd done, but to me, it felt like an eternity. The bloody mallet clattered to the floor, and I pushed old Werner's body away from me. I started shaking, almost screamed. I'd killed him. I'd murdered someone. I had done the right thing, though, hadn't I? He'd have killed me. He killed others. The guts, the meat, the freezer, there was no doubt, and I'd done it in self-defense. When I opened the freezer, my world crumbled apart. What I found inside wasn't a corpse. Neither was it body parts. It was a dead animal. In the freezer were the remains of a deer. Part of its lower half was missing, and his innards were carved out. The blood and guts I'd seen. What about the arm I'd seen last night, though? It must have been, but then I saw the legs of the deer. What I had seen all along. Thin. Body part. Only the dark of night and my imagination had transferred it into the arm of a person. Dear God, what have I done? Had this old guy really done nothing more to create some sort of complicated organic fertilizer? Right at this moment, my instincts activated and I turned to run. I already made it to the door of the shack when my mind started to work again. What the hell was I doing? Should I call the police? What would I tell them? That I broke into his place because I thought he was a serial killer? That he attacked me after that and I killed him in self-defense? Would they even believe me? In that outfit? No. It was much more likely that they thought I'd broke into his shack. He'd found me stealing his stuff, and I killed him. Or hell, that I came in here and killed him. I'd made it no secret that I hated him. Shit. What the fuck should I do? First, I turned off the lights. Was there anyone nearby? There'd been so much noise. As I watched and listened, I remember that no one else lived near enough to have heard anything. The only person who'd hear anything would have been no other than me. I went back inside, closed the door of the shack, and then the window. I checked the wood splintering on the window and tried my best to get rid of it and make it sound as natural as possible. After that, I put everything back that the old guy had pushed off the shelves in his onslaught. Finally, there was the old guy himself. Was he really dead? I awkwardly touched his neck to see if there was any pulse. Then I looked at his head again and wondered what the hell I was even doing. For a while I wondered what to do. Then I saw his huge fertilizer bags. Old Werner might have been strong, but he was still a scrawny old man. The irony was not missed on me when the old man's body was almost a perfect fit for it. I pushed the body bag to the front of the shack and then started to meticulously clean up the blood. First, I wiped up the floor and workbench. Then I checked every notch and cranny and used one of his many chemicals to get rid of any blood splatters. I checked the whole place multiple times over. I had to make sure there were no blood splatters left anywhere. Only then did I open the door again. Once again, I checked the area. Sure, it was dark, and not even 30 meters to the cornfield. Yet, I knew if anyone should see me carrying a bag of fertilizer through his yard the night before he went missing, I couldn't risk it. When I was sure that I was completely alone, I sprinted to the edge of the cornfield with a heavy bag over my shoulder. Once I made it, I stumbled forward a few meters, but luckily avoided to crash to the ground. For a moment, my head was spinning, and I almost passed out from the sheer exhaustion. I rested the bag between the corn stalks and ran back to the shack. The whole place smelled of the chemicals I'd used. Once more, I went through it, using water to clear away the residue of the chemicals. I also closed off the composter and freezing box. Before I did that, though, I got part of the animal meat, cut it to pieces, and ground it up with a mallet. I added the ground up meat to the composter. I made sure to leave the bloodied and dirty tool on the workbench. I had to make it look as if it was the last thing the old guy had done. At this moment, I noticed something else. A notebook was stashed away in a small shelf above the workbench. When I opened it, I found that it contained the old guy's notes on how to create a special type of fertilizer. It was pages upon pages of ingredients with detailed instructions. I skimmed one of the pages, and it specified how certain ingredients had to be gathered. On the next one, he clarified that deer meat was best during their mating season, in autumn or early winter. That must have been the reason for his secret trips. He was getting deer meat for his fertilizer. All he'd been doing was trying to keep his formula a secret. Once I was outside again, I closed the padlock, careful not to leave any fingerprints on it. Carrying old Werner's body over to my house took quite a while. Every 10 meters or so I had to take a break. Once I'd made it, I hid the body down in my basement. After that, I went back to the cornfield to make sure there were no tracks or blood splatters anywhere. It was an hour or so before dawn when I was finally done with everything. I was utterly exhausted and pretty much fell into my bed. The next day was a blurry mess for me. I spent most of it in bed, curled up under my blanket. Murder is not something from which you move on with your life. You just can't. It was only in the evening that I remembered his little notebook. Reading through his notes was the only thing that helped me to turn my thoughts away from what I'd done. It's not an understatement that the topic of fertilizer saved my sanity that day. I carefully went over every page. I knew damn well that I'd not be able to turn my harvest around. I might try my luck in the greenhouse, though. And if that would be a success, I could prepare for the next year. During the next days, I procured quite a few things. A composter, different fertilizers, chemicals, bone meal, and a variety of other ingredients. One thing I was missing, though, and that I wasn't sure how to get, was deer meat. But I knew I had a substitute for it in my basement. It was still quite fresh, and most importantly, I had to get rid of it. It was a nasty piece of work, you can imagine. I almost vomited every couple of minutes. Due to the heat, old Werner's body had been rapidly decomposing. I almost vomited the moment I saw his bloated, squishy corpse. Eventually, though, I got used to it. I grew numb, or I was already. There's one thing, though. I told myself over and over again. This was not a person. This was a hunk of meat, nothing more. Once I cut it up, though, it became pieces. The blood, the flesh, the bones. It all became things, and it got way easier. I didn't mind anymore. Grinding old Werner up had become nothing but work in the end. Gruesome work, sure, but still only work. It took me the better part of 2 days, but after that, I'd ground up the old guy's remains. Finally, I added them to the other ingredients in the composter. It was about a week or so later that the police arrived at my doorstep. I'd never seen an officer like that. Old, tired, and most of all, utterly disinterested in what was going on. He asked me a few questions, the typical, when have you last seen him, and, other similar ones. I answered them truthfully, and the guy said he'd be back if he needed more information. He checked the old guy's property, the shack, the house. The only thing he noticed was that old Werner must have gone out in the middle of the night. It was clear that this officer didn't give a shit. He didn't care what happened here in this small village. He concluded that old Werner must have walked off and vanished in the middle of the night. They put together a search party, but it was only a few people, and they never found out a thing. Old Werner became just another name added to the list. After this, his house was put up for sale, but no one seemed to show any interest. It's now late in the year and the fertilizer I've created has developed nicely. 6 weeks ago, I upgraded the greenhouse for winter farming. Since then, things have grown well, really well. The tomatoes are big, ripe, and almost bursting with flavor. The old man had indeed created a splendid recipe. What's more interesting, though, is that I can't help but notice how fast and strong the plants have grown. They look even healthier than old Werner's. It might be the unique conditions in this greenhouse. To be honest, though, it might be due to my own little addition to the fertilizer. As I'm typing this out, I can't help but laugh at the grim irony of the situation. The one way the old man was able to improve his fertilizer even further was becoming part of it himself. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed that horrifying creepypasta by RehnWriter. If you did, I'm going to leave the link to the story down below, so be sure to give the author some love. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button, click subscribe, and the little bell so you can be notified when the next one pops up. Check out my short film Late, there'll be an annotation on screen right now. And as always, my Darkness Militia. Have a terrifying evening.